Welcome to the Denise Gary Show, talking about some exciting developments in Israel and some very dangerous, threatening issues going on in that part of the world, the cradle of civilization. I wanted to begin with the fact that today, on Tuesday, there has been a day of rage. Palestinians, or otherwise known as Arab Muslims, have been demonstrating violently on the streets of Judea and Samaria, the historic heartland that's spoken of over and over and over and over again in the pages of the Bible. Cities like Jerusalem, Hebron, Bethlehem, all throughout Judea and Samaria, cities that are part of ancient Israel that dates back over 4,000 years. Ancient Israel, places like Hebron where the patriarchs and the matriarchs are buried. Places like Bethlehem, once also known as the City of David. Also, of course, other areas that are part of historic and ancient Israel. So the Muslim Arabs have threatened that they're going to keep up a steady stream of violence throughout this week, particularly on Friday. Friday is also a holy day for Muslims as they go to their mosques to pray, and of course they will be incited to riot inside the mosques in Judea and Samaria. So again, just wanted to share this. I took this, for those of you that are interested, this is from the Jewish press. You can find this information also in Israel National News. You should be able to find it in the Times of Israel. I'm sure probably all the leading newspapers in Israel carry the information. And what is particularly important, I think, that I wanted to bring to your attention is the fact that U.S. foreign policy changed. It changed about 2 weeks ago on a Monday, November 18th. This is a historic change in U.S. foreign policy, something that I don't hear anyone in the media talking about. But this is really important to Israel's national security, and what benefits Israel's national security benefits the national security of the United States. I'd like you to see a clip that I picked up off of YouTube. It's by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo talking about the triumph of truth and the victory for the historical legal facts on the ground pertaining to a brand new shift in U.S. foreign policy towards Judea and Samaria. Let's listen.
Turning now to Israel. The Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. U.S. public statements on settlement activities in the West Bank have been inconsistent over decades. In 1978, the Carter administration categorically concluded that Israel's establishment of civilian settlements was inconsistent with international law. However, in 1981, President Reagan disagreed with that conclusion and stated that he didn't believe that the settlements were inherently illegal. Subsequent administrations recognized that unrestrained settlement activity could be an obstacle to peace, but they wisely and prudently recognized that dwelling on legal positions didn't advance peace. Turning now to Israel. The Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. U.S. public statements on settlement activities in the West Bank have been inconsistent over decades. In 1978, the Carter administration categorically concluded that Israel's establishment of civilian settlements was inconsistent with international law. However, in 1981, President Reagan disagreed with that conclusion and stated that he didn't believe that the settlements were inherently illegal. Subsequent administrations recognized that unrestrained settlement activity could be an obstacle to peace, but they wisely and prudently recognized that dwelling on legal positions didn't advance peace. However, in December 2016, at the very end of the previous administration, Secretary Kerry changed decades of this careful, bipartisan approach by publicly reaffirming the supposed...
Ladies and gentlemen, so apparently my producer tells me that for some reason this clip was going forward, skipped back, and then went forward again. We don't know why that happened. Sometimes there are glitches when you download a video clip from YouTube. Anyway, we apologize for that. But the point is that this is a really important development. As many of you know, the Arab League, which of course still exists today, it's very, very much in effect. In 1948, when the Arab armies, several Arab armies, marched against the newly established Jewish state in Israel, where Jews had lived for thousands of years, the Arab League, the Secretary General of the Arab League, came out with a statement that the war by Muslims against the Jewish state would be, quote, a war of extermination. And speaking for the governments of the 6 Arab states that attacked the Jews in Israel, the Secretary General went on to say it will be a momentous massacre to be spoken of like the Mongolian massacre of the Crusaders or the Christians. So it was part of the idea that the Arab armies had anticipated the fact that those Jews that managed to escape the death camps or came after the death camps were liberated, that those Jews had lived there for centuries, those Jews that had been traveling from places where there was tremendous racism and massacres in Europe that had been coming for hundreds of years. It was just imagined that they would be fairly quickly massacred, or they would be completely wiped out and there would be total genocide of the Jewish people. It didn't happen. And so as a result, other Arab Muslims that were living there became quote unquote refugees. All of the refugee populations around the World War II that surrounded that World War II era, all of them have been resettled. You still hear issues regarding Arab Muslim refugees. It's just a part of a continuation of the propaganda campaign that Muslim Arab states have wanted to use to say the Jews are racist, the Jews are terrible, there's refugees. We have these Arab Muslim refugees, which in effect is false. There are Muslim Arabs that live right there in the same cities and in the same communities as the Jewish people. They can go to school there. They can become an Israeli citizen. They can become a doctor and work in the hospitals there, become a nurse, a dentist, a professor at a university. There are Arab Muslims that are elected to Israel's parliament, or what Israel refers to as the Knesset, i.e. their Congress. So there's absolute freedom. The only thing that the Israelis do not allow the Muslim Arabs to do is to actually be a part of the army, the Israeli Defense Forces, because they would, as we've experienced here in the United States, sometimes individuals will turn on their fellow soldiers. And we've experienced that here too, and Israel would be afraid it would experience that as well. So you don't have to become part of the army if you're a Muslim and an Arab living in Israel and have Israeli citizenship. But you do if you're Jewish, male or female. But at any rate, I wanted to get on with the fact that, this country, I'm so proud of President Trump and his administration, because when Jimmy Carter, Democrat, came out years ago and said, well, Israel doesn't have a right to have communities in Judea and Samaria, and I thought, I was a child, a small child. But I thought to myself, as I heard that and going forward, thinking about the Middle East, how could that be? Israel had understood that it was going back to its ancient homeland as Jewish people over the centuries, some remaining there, others traveling there again, because of the horrible persecution in the Middle East and in Europe and in Russia and Asia. The Jews always made their way back to their ancient homeland. There was always that call in their heart. And I think it's so important to understand that when that war happened in 48 and Jordan managed to keep control over Judea and Samaria, that would be so temporary. It was over in 67 when the Arab armies attacked Israel again. So in 67, in that war, Israel won that war in 67. Israel took back Judea and Samaria, what had been historically part of Israel for many, many, many years, again for 4,000 years. And so for Carter to have suggested that it was illegal when Israel won a war of self-defense in 1967 and took back essentially what Jordan had stolen from Israel. Israel only was able to take it back because she won a war. Jordan was in control of that land only because the Arab armies were able to secure that area called the West Bank. So obviously the fact that Israel won that war, she's continued to have Jewish residents living there in Judea and Samaria. I think it's altogether historically accurate and based on reality. The fact that there have been Jewish communities there for centuries is appropriate. So again, I want to say thank you to the Trump administration for, I think, setting a historic wrong that was initiated by Jimmy Carter. And I always felt inappropriate for the United States government to tell the Jewish people that they couldn't be a part of the land that had been theirs for many, many, many centuries. So, and again, I think it's important for us to look at the fact that now today, the Muslim Arabs have called Tuesday, this day, a day of rage. They called Israel, or the Jewish people's right to reestablish their homeland in ancient Israel. They called that a Nakba, or the day of catastrophe. And again, this refugee situation, so-called, is really a farce. I mean, I'm so thankful that we finally have a president who has said, okay, we've given billions of dollars to these Muslim Arabs, the quote-unquote refugees, who actually lost their homes because they were doing what? They were fighting in an effort to commit genocide, to massacre every man, woman, and Jewish child, which is what the Jordanian Army tried to do, which is why they were able to literally kill so many Jews that Jews were no longer able to even inhabit the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. They were literally wiping them out of the West Bank, which is, again, part of Israel's historic homeland. And I thought it was interesting today that I just saw this. This is, you can see this on Memory. And it says here it is, Memory, the Middle East Media Research Institute. This just came out today. It says the Jordanian Army conducts maneuvers simulating a military battle with Israel. And it says yesterday, November 25th, the Jordanian Army conducted an operation called Swords of Karama, which is named for Israel's 1968. It was a military operation because Fatah is a terrorist organization. It's part of the Palestine Liberation Organization. And in 1968, the Muslim Arabs under the leadership of Yasser Arafat were continually attacking Jewish civilians at work on their farms, in their businesses. They were committing raids inside the state of Israel, slitting the throats of men, women, and children in their beds. I mean, there were horrific terrorist attacks on a constant and consistent basis. And so finally, it was called a war of attrition at the time because it was never ending. It was just constant. And in 1968, Israel initiated a military operation to sort of clean up Fata from, again, attacking Israeli communities. They're not on the West Bank, certainly, but they're in Israel. So the Jordanian Army says it is doing tactical military maneuvers by the mechanized battalion of the Jordanian Central Command. It shows King Abdullah in Jordanian military was televised that the King Abdullah was standing with army commanders in front of a model of Jordan's western border in the Dead Sea area, saying with a Jordanian website stating explicitly that the maneuver simulated a battle with, quote unquote, the occupying entity across the river Jordan. That is Israel. In addition to that, Jordan is reopening a mosque atop the Hurva synagogue, an ancient Jewish synagogue that's literally was, in the heart and soul of Jerusalem's Jewish quarter, where the Jewish people live in that very ancient area. And those of you that have been to Jerusalem, you've been to the Jewish quarter. It's ancient, and this Hurva synagogue has now got a mosque because apparently King Abdullah of Jordan has decided that it's going to refurbish it and restore this mosque so that it will be in operation. And I think it's interesting. I want to draw a line from the Hashemite family in Jordan to Turkey, because Turkey's actions in Jerusalem have been deeply disturbing. The Turks have been renovating several mosques. They've purchased several buildings. They financially support the Muslim Brotherhood in Jerusalem and in Israel. And they've been working to increase their presence in the old city, Jerusalem, and in the Jewish quarter, which is very dangerous for the Jewish people. So you've got Jordan and the Hashemite family competing with the Turks. And the fact that the Turks and the Jordanians, these Muslim forces, are building up inside Jerusalem. And I'd like you to pray for the protection of the Jewish people, because the Muslim Brotherhood is very strong. Again, it's financed by Erdogan, the president, really brutal dictator of Turkey today. And again, they're flowing into private pockets. The Turks' funds are flowing into the private pockets of these Muslim Brotherhood leaders that are creating tension for people living in the old quarter in Jerusalem. So again, I wanted to catch you up on developments. They're in the heart or the cradle of civilization. They're in Israel and in the Middle East. And be aware that this is, again, a really important time for the president to also declare the Muslim Brotherhood, designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Because when you think about all the Muslim Brotherhood operations going on U.S. campuses here in California and across the nation, it's very concerning. And it's part of, and of course, they're funded as well by organizations such as the Open Society Foundation or the Tides Foundation and other groups that are supported by liberal progressives that are deeply anti-Israel, including billionaires like George Soros, himself Jewish, but sadly, leading the war on the boycott and divestments and sanctions movement by Arab Muslims and anti-Semitic people right here in the United States, again, that are liberal progressives and want to help bring down the Jewish state, the only democracy in the Middle East and the only Jewish state in the world, and certainly an extremely small state that depends on the strength of its military and its intelligence apparatus to keep it safe. And we want to pray for their safety today. I want to end today's broadcast with a scripture. One of my favorite scriptures. This is taken out of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, for those of you who may not know that. I'm sure everybody does, but for those who don't. Chapter 12, verse 3. And it says, the Lord speaking to Abraham, and he's saying, I will bless people that bless you, and I will curse him that curseth you. And in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And when you think about all of the military contributions, the medical breakthroughs, the scientific breakthroughs, the understanding we have based on intelligence sources inside Israel, when you consider all of the tremendous discoveries and help that the Israeli people have provided to people and nations around the world, has been extremely critical towards the advancement of civilization. And I want to say thank you to Israel for all of their creative, innovative, technological breakthroughs. And I want to say thank you to President Trump for blessing the state of Israel, and by making clear that it will no longer consider Israeli communities in part of its ancient homeland, Judea and Samaria, as illegal outposts. Again, President Trump, on behalf of the United States, blessing Israel. And the word of the Lord said, those that bless Israel will be blessed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to the Denice Gary Show. We've got a very exciting show with us tomorrow with Philip Haney on an important development in the impeachment proceedings regarding life and death scenarios. I want to take us now to our commercial, Frugati's, and we'll be right back.
I want to tell you about a place I love to go, Frugati's Italian Restaurant. Very few locations here provide seating outside in front of a fabulous water fountain with an atmosphere that is reminiscent to me of eating outdoors in Venice. This is real Italian food by real Italians. And what makes it even more so is owner Ralph Frugoletti, who nearly a quarter century ago brought a wood fire oven from Milan, Italy to make, like his mother, fresh homemade bread and pizzas. Moreover, Frugati's Restaurant offers you not only the very best in Southern Italian cooking, even importing the finest ingredients for authentic Italian food, including a fitness menu. After all, Ralph has represented the United States and Italy, competing in the Master Championship Games. He knows all the right food for good fitness, so check out the menu. After today's broadcast, run over to Frugati's Italian Restaurant and Catering at 600 Coffee Road here in Bakersfield. And after a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday service, stop into Frugati's for a great lunch. I'll see you there, and tell Mr. Ralph Frugoletti that Denice sent you. Salute. Buon appetito.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just stopped in the other day to get one of Frugati's appetizers. It's called Chicken Things, and it's so fabulous. I mean, it's just so delicious. So I encourage all of you. You want a little snack this afternoon? You want a snack for tomorrow? You want to have some snacks available on hand when the company comes over for Thanksgiving dinner? Go to Frugati's. Buy some of their fabulous appetizers on the appetizer menu. Great, it'll be great, and some fabulous hors d'oeuvres. They're, I believe it's asparagus wrapped with bacon. It looks like a sort of a shish kebab, but it's got various items on it. It's so good. Anyway, Annotate's products. Let's talk about Annotate's products. President Trump has correctly stated that economic security is national security, and in the Tehachapi Mountains of Kern County resides a United States defense contractor called Annotate's Products. And this is Annotate's Products in the Tehachapi Mountains is really the Silicon Valley of the aerospace industry. And it's there in eastern Kern County. Annotate's Products is a forward leading manufacturer and distributor of hardware sold to defense corporations and aerospace companies around the country, as well as to U.S. allies like Israel. So for anything that flies, including every satellite that orbits planet Earth, Anatase Products has probably got its hardware in it. So contact Scott Baker, former Marine Corps officer, at 661 area code 822-6873, 661-822-6873. Talk to Scott Baker, the president and owner of Anatase Products, and get whatever hardware you need manufactured and sent to do the kind of work you need to get done on behalf of the national security of the United States. Thank you for listening to the Denise Gary Show. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great evening.